Dustin Baker, VikesNow, the November 29th edition. We are, 5 days away from Vikings Jets. But before we do that, I want to put the Vikings win over the Patriots to bed. What I usually like to do on Mondays, after a Sunday game, is go through the broad takeaways. We did that yesterday because the last game was on Thanksgiving. So I want to go over the surprising aspects from the Vikings win. And then I promise my takes on Vikings-Patriots will be done for the year. I know we're a little late, but that's kind of the price you pay when a game happens on Thanksgiving and you have a mini bye week to prepare for the Jets. So let's go into some of the eyebrow-raising items that came out of New England's loss to the Minnesota Vikings in Week 12. The first, I talked about this on the other podcast that I do with Brian McKinney, Believe in Vikings last night, but I want to extrapolate here, is that Mac Jones, coming into this game, when I looked at the schedule, I was like, oh, cool, we get to play Mac Jones because he's not overly prolific. He's not terribly mobile. I mean, he's not a total statue, but I thought we would have a little siesta and say, all right, we'll get to get an average quarterback, get him at home, stifle him, and it should result in a win. Well, it resulted in a win, but as I said on Believe in Vikings yesterday, it wouldn't have mattered if Tom Brady was still the quarterback of the Patriots. Mac Jones played well enough, or the Vikings secondary played poorly enough through the first three quarters, that Mac Jones basically looked like Brady. Threw for 382 yards and was it 2 touchdowns? And the Patriots, I'll get to this more to this later, is basically played error-free football, and Mac Jones was at the helm. Kudos to him. He looked wonderful. 382 passing yards. That'll do it. That usually results in a W if it's in the flow of a game and not garbage time. And none of the Patriots' antics were garbage time. So it's kind of like, how I'm trying to scout Mike White this week, which we'll do for the rest of this week, is maybe this guy will be a world beater because Mac Jones certainly was, and based on his numbers and his proficiency, Patriots, with that defense, physical as hell, probably should have won the game. Alas, they did not because the Vikings are fourth quarter heroes for out of nowhere decided that's what they're going to be this year, thanks to Kevin O'Connell. But I will argue that if Tom Brady of yesteryear or of today was the quarterback of the Patriots, the outcome would be the same because Mac Jones played error-free football and was fantastic. I did not expect that. So lesson learned, especially when you're about to scout Mike White. It's like, all right, well, we should get a reprieve with this asshole, but maybe he'll be brilliant too. All right, the next one is Kene Nwangu's mighty touchdown. I believe one of my counterparts on Vikings territory, Adam New in England, predicted this. I was editing one of his pieces to publish last week, and I believe that was one of his bold predictions, was Kene Nwangu bust free and breaks one, and that he did. It was a mighty return. It flipped the momentum in the game, perhaps a game-saving transaction from the second-year running back. And he, I want to point out, is the surprise, is on a mighty pace as a returner. He has 3 kick return touchdowns, which are not easy. They never were, and they especially aren't in today's NFL. And he's on a pace where he has 3 through 22 games, and there's only a handful of men in NFL history who have done that. A lot of them turn into anonymous names, and you don't know much about them thereafter. And then there's others like Devin Hester who turn into, Hall of Famers. So I want to call out that mighty achievement from Kene Nwangu. He's so fast that he was sitting on 1, and last year he had 2. So hopefully we'll get a second one down the stretch in the final 6 games and or in the postseason, a game-winning type of kick return. And the cool part was, remember last year, he had 2, one against the Ravens, one against the Niners, and the Vikings lost both games. You really shouldn't lose football games when you have a serendipitous kick return for a touchdown. Alas, the Vikings did not lose this one, and they put the kick return TD to good use. Congrats to Kene. Number 3, big surprise, it's only 1 catch, but Jalen Reagor's third down reception, I can't remember which quarter it was, shame on me, but I remember being there in the stands. It felt pretty damn clutch, and because, you traded a 4th rounder for the man, you want to get production of him. He hasn't done much as a punt returner. Maybe he's sitting on one like Kene. We shall see. But when he caught third and was it 3rd and 8 or something? Moved the chains, extended the drive, and that was a big damn deal. And it got me to thinking. And I've never said this out loud, nor have I thought it until this weekend, is I'm starting to think if you use him and his speed and his receiving acumen as a WR3, Shame on me again. He might be a little bit more productive and prolific than KJ Osborne. Now, KJ Osborne, what does he do? He scores clutch touchdowns, at least one per year. But I'm kind of flirting with the idea, not that it's up to me, that if they showcased Reagor more so as a WR3, perhaps he could get more separation via route running, and, Cousins could find him more than he finds Osborne, because let's face it, Osborne in the passing game has been a footnote. Now, that said, in the Buffalo game, KJ Osborne had a marvelous 4th and 2 conversion that the game would have ended if it wasn't for him and his heroism, and he also had a couple nifty plays against the Patriots on a drive late in the game. So, I'm not anti-KJ Osborne, but with Reagor's draft stock, we know the raw talent that he has. I'm intrigued by either this year or next year getting him involved more than he currently is, and that might involve, stealing some of KJ Osborne's offensive snaps. Put me down as somebody who's intrigued by that, if they even try it at all. Number 4, one of the takeaways is that the Vikings continue to be clutch. I have no idea why they wait for 3 quarters to turn on the gas, especially on defense, but they do. It's a pattern. You cannot ignore it. I'm even finding a comfort level in this. So when the Patriots game was that damn close, and they were even leading heading into the 4th quarter, and then the Hunter Henry replay went the Vikings' way, I've gotten to the point with these close games, I'm like, oh, we got them right where we want them. I've never felt that way, or at least I haven't during the Zimmer era. A dirty little secret about the Zimmer era is from 2014 to 2019, games weren't usually close. The Vikings typically won decisively, 24-14 or whatever Zimmer score he preferred, or they got their asses beat decisively. That was kind of Zimmer ball from 2014 to 2019. Then 2020, 2021, and now 2022, all of these games are tight, and the last 2 seasons, they usually found a way to lose or maintained a 500 record despite having all kinds of roster talent, but now they're winning these games. So, you get a sample size of almost 3 months of this shit, and you're like, all right, Vikings are down by a touchdown, got them right where we want them. Kirk's going to do the thing, the defense is going to show up after doing nothing for 2 hours, and we're going to be just fine. I don't know how that correlates to postseason projection. I would like to think, or let's say, based on logic, I'd say that's not going to work against the Chiefs and shit like that. But it worked against the Bills, by God. So I think they're finding these clutch ways to win, and it's improving their chances. So when they get to the postseason, they're going to look around at each other in the 4th quarter and be like, shit, we're down by 10 points. Well, we've done this 15 times this year. Let's go win the thing. That's kind of my optimistic approach. When I was a kid, this is kind of a sidebar here. When I was a kid, I lived in Houston, Texas from 1994 to 1997. And that's when the Houston Rockets were rocking and rolling. And I got to witness the NBA championship, game 1 of the NBA championship against the New York Knicks, and then the whole playoff spurt in both those seasons. They won NBA Finals. And they were coined Clutch City by some awesome marketer, or I believe it was the Houston Chronicle editor who said, Clutch City was the big, bold headline. And the Houston Rockets back then would find these curious-ass ways to get down in a series, 3-1, or 0-2 against the Suns, Kevin Johnson, Charles Barkley. And then, every playoff series they got behind, and then they found a way to come back and win because they just had the clutch gene. And now it's too early to say that the Vikings can do the same thing in the Super Bowl, but it's giving me, it's causing me to reminisce about how that felt when you just had that assured feeling that the Rockets were going to come back, even if they were down 3-1 in a 7-game series. It's like, oh, cool. They'll be right back. They'll win the next 2 games. Doesn't matter if they're home or on the road because they're built different. This is what they do. So in a very junior aspect through 12 weeks of the regular season, it kind of feels like that's what the Vikings are doing. It really doesn't matter. If they get down 21-3, they're going to find a way to come back. Now, there are limits. See the Eagles game or see the Cowboys game. But in those nitty-gritty ones, I really have no reservations from this sample size. 11 games now, the Vikings have DNA to emulate their version of Clutch City. A couple more for you. I said earlier that the Patriots played an error-free game, and they did. They didn't have any turnovers. They didn't really have any gaffes. They hit harder than any football team I've seen this year. it was a very Belichickian game. They did everything they needed to win except close out the Vikings in the fourth quarter. However, looking through the stat sheet on Friday, I noticed the time of possession for the Vikings. It favored them 36 minutes to 23 minutes. And this flipped the script because even as the Vikings continue to win these games, they're usually upside down via time of possession because O'Connell prefers to push the envelope on offense. That's totally fine, but normally when teams win the time of possession battle, then they are, the teams that are going to the playoffs. So it was as if they had a premeditated strategy to say, all right, we're gonna own the time of possession this game, and 36 to 23 is no joke. And that, when you look at all of the lack of mistakes that the Patriots had, they didn't do anything bad. I think the saving grace was that the Vikings controlled the line of scrimmage and the time of possession in a pretty emphatic way. 36 to 23, again, is no joke. Usually, the way that the Vikings have been winning up until this Patriots game was forcing turnovers, limiting penalties, and then grinding out something in the fourth quarter. This game, they kind of stepped on their throats on offense and held the ball substantially longer than the Patriots did. All right, I got two left. The second to last one is the red zone defense. I tweeted a couple weeks ago, and it was true, that the Vikings have the worst red zone defense in the NFL per touchdowns allowed when the other team gets inside the 20. Now, people were quick to clap back, they hardly let anybody down in the red zone, so that's bullshit. Well, I get it. They were like fourth best in limiting teams at even getting into the red zone, so yeah, props to them. However, when they did let people in, they scored better than, or I guess worse than any team in the league. The Vikings ranked 32nd in red zone touchdown percentage allowed. Well, this game, the Patriots, who were not good on offense in the red zone, went 0 for 3. So when you're looking at trying to figure out how the hell the Vikings win this game, it was because for the first time in 2022, the red zone defense showed up and did not allow the other team to march and score 6 points. Patriots were 0 for 3 in the red zone, and they have their own demons for not being, something's got to give. And what gave was the Patriots continued their woes, and the Vikings actually climbed to only ranked 26th now in red zone touchdown percentage. So those tiny little things help win football games. All right, and then the final one, and this one is tricky to elaborate on during this pass-happy NFL that we've evolved into since Peyton Manning and the Broncos changed everything in 2012. Everybody wants to throw the ball, and running the ball, you can't even say it. It's like a dirty word. However, it was strange that after this game, whether you listen to the coverage on KFan or even, writers like me thereafter, the Vikings were applauded for sticking to the run when it didn't work. They had 27 rushes for 57 yards. Usually you'd be like, oh God, you're running it up the middle. These guys just don't get it. That's not working. Why do you continue to do it? But what that does, even when it's not really working and you're in this, this grinder of a game, is it allows you to throw it. And it opens up play action. And by the way, you have one of the best play action quarterbacks in the business. So, yeah, I will even say that, if you're going to run the ball 27 times for 57 yards, you better find something else because it's not working. Well, this is one of those games where it worked. They kept giving it to Dalvin Cook, who was not overly efficient. But who cares? Because the threat of Cook, who we've seen hit home runs in 2022, kept the Patriots secondary guessing. We have to account for this guy, and therefore, we're going to sell out to stop Dalvin Cook, which they did, but then that opened up, throwing lanes for Jefferson, Hawkinson, and Thielen. So it's kind of rare to say, establish the run, baby, because people are like, the numbers say you should throw it all the time. And this was a circumstance where running it, even when it didn't work, helped the Vikings win the game. All right, that's VikesNow, the Tuesday edition. Tomorrow we'll speak with Josh Fry, and we'll start to get into the Jets, who are 7-4 and are another team that is quasi-desperate. They need a win to keep pace in the AFC's evolving playoff picture. Right now, they're the 7th seed, and I think the Patriots are nipping at their heels and a couple other teams. So all I got, and Skol, baby.